are in this body at this time on a journey of not just getting to one place, but allowing ourselves to be on a journey of moment by moment transcendence, looking at it as a beautiful path rather than there's one end game.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Expanded Podcast. Jessica here. We have such an incredible episode for you today. Our guest is a #1 New York Times bestselling author. She has penned 9 books. She's an international speaker. She's been featured on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, and she's the ultimate spirit junkie. You've probably heard or read or have on your shelf right now one of her books, The Universe Has Your Back, Super Attractor, Spirit Junkie, and her latest book, which is absolutely phenomenal, Happy Days. We have on Gabby Bernstein. So having Gabby on was such a manifestation moment, I just have to tell you, because one of the things I wrote down on my manifestation list when we started the Manifestation Challenge in December was to be able to interview 5 of my big expanders and to also hold space for those conversations without abandoning myself and allowing my authenticity to shine through. And right after I wrote it on the list, I immediately was asked to come on the podcast with Lacey and Elise to talk to Elise Lunin. We have a fantastic episode with her. I'll link it below. But I was able to speak with her in a way that felt so easeful. And that really expanded me to feel like I could have any conversation with any person, expander or not, and how much I know their life and their work only adds to the depth of the conversation. So it was so kismet when this opportunity presented, and I was so honored to be able to speak with Gabby in this episode. This episode really dives into how Gabby defines spirituality, the tools that she's using to really deepen her practice, to connect more to herself. She talks about internal family systems, which is something I'm so obsessed with after reading this more in depth in her book. It's like the 3rd time. They say good things come in 3s, and it was about the 3rd time that someone had recommended or shown or spoken about this modality. So I'm definitely diving into it deeper. And what I love about Gabby's new book and what she details there, and she talks about a little bit in the episode, so trigger warning for anyone who has experienced any sort of sexual abuse, but Gabby shares her journey with unpacking her repressed memories of sexual abuse as a child and how just horrifying that was to discover, and all of the tools that she's utilized in order to really be on the other side of that and being in a place of healing and a place of peace. And she shares a lot of those tools in the book and on this episode. So there's so much to take from this. I love hearing her talk, and I love her wisdom. You guys are going to love it. One other fun fact about my sort of revelation with Gabby's work and how it's so in tandem, and I just love seeing the synchronicities line up. One of the first books one of my friends recommended when I was at my complete rock bottom and really began my spiritual journey, which was around like 25, 26, was Spirit Junkie. And that also lended to The Universe Has Your Back. And reading those books and hearing her words and describing her connection with spirit and how she uses it to really go about her life and look at life and find peace and solace through things just cracked something open within me and began me on this journey of spirituality and wellness and self-help and personal development. And so it's really cool to see the very first piece of this puzzle started with her. And now I get to interview her on the Expanded podcast. So I know you guys are going to love this one. So without further ado, here is Gabby Bernstein. Enjoy. One quick question. What is your sun, moon, and rising sign?
Okay, so I am a Scorpio with an Aries moon and Sag rising. What do you think that means to me?
So powerful. Scorpio's really powerful, spiritual, in depth. I have so many Scorpios around me. It's insane. I have Scorpio moon. Aries is one of the fastest manifestors because they're like top of the chart, go, go, go. And Sag, from what I know of it, is a bit more, likes to have their hand in a bunch of different things at once, likes to travel or move, is just like excited by a lot of different ideas. So that seems to fit really well.
There I am.
I actually wanted to kick off. This might be a little corny, but I think it's very on point. So I have the Spirit Junkie app and I pulled up one of the quotes. So I thought, sometimes we kick off episodes with it. And I thought that'd be very fitting today. So the one that came up was, I'm willing to give over my plans and trust in a higher power. So how does that one land for you?
Well, that's how I live my life. And I'm not just saying that and like bullshitting you. I live my life completely surrendered in most situations, most of the time. And that's not something that happened overnight. It took about 42 years to get here. But I'm here now. And that's why I felt equipped to write Happy Days, because I couldn't have written that book if I didn't really believe it.
What does that essence of surrender mean to you? I think it's one of those words that everyone knows that they need to do, but when it comes to the practicality of how do I get there, what does it feel like? I'll pose it this way, like what does surrender feel like somatically in your body? Like what is a feeling of that?
Somatically, it feels like a presence of ease, and most importantly for me, it's just a soft sense of trust. It's sort of a gentle presence of safety.
And do you find that the surrender, you say it took 42 years to get to that place, but do you find it is sort of a step-by-step journey, whereas it's almost like you reach out into that surrender a little bit, and then you realize, wait a second, I'm safe here. Okay, I'm held, I'm guided. And then inch by inch, you can continue to go out into that surrender?
Well, for most of my career and spiritual path, I have had a practice of noticing when I'm controlling or not surrendered, anxious, controlling, afraid, addicted, whatever, and taking that experience and offering it up through prayer. So thank you, God, for taking this from me. Thank you for revealing to me what I can learn from this. Thank you for letting me step away and you can take over, letting a presence greater than me take over. For a while, it was just fake it till you make it. And eventually it became my truth. The therapeutic process that I've followed for the last decade, internal family systems therapy, that I'm now trained in, I believe helped me heighten that process and deepen the meaning to me. So in IFS, we have a resourced self, capital S, self. And self is compassionate, caring, loving. It's the internal parent. And the more we create direct access to self and a deep ability to tap into that energy of self and let it become the louder voice in the room, the easier it is to notice the other parts of us that are fearful, anxious, controlling, addicted, whatever, and let self take them. Let self take over. Let the energy of curiosity and compassion and love be a presence of safety in the internal system. And so it's not dissimilar to what I just described of, noticing that you've got something up and asking a spiritual connection of your own understanding to take it from you and resolve it, and then letting yourself receive that guidance. It's quite similar to this process, but really practicing this process, which I write about this whole process of internal family systems and in Happy Days. And the foreword from the book is actually from Dick Schwartz, who is the founder of IFS. And I can speak to this because I'm not in the clinical space, but it's an extraordinarily spiritual practice. So very similarly to saying, God, take this from me, resolve this, please. I now turn to self as well. And it's a similar presence, the presence of love. And let love lead. Let compassion lead. Let curiosity lead. And what it is really a mental reconditioning of how we approach our inner psyche.
I am so fascinated by internal family systems. A few friends had started the therapy a little bit and started telling me whisperings of it here and there. And it was kind of piquing my interest. And then after reading your book, I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to learn more about this. So for someone who is just kind of hearing about this for the first time, how would you describe that process?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. I see myself as a translator, so I'm going to demystify some of these principles for you. So IFS, we talked about self. Self is the leader. Self is the internal parent. Self is love, compassion, kindness, courage, calmness, curiosity. Then there's these different parts of who we are. So we think we're just one person, but we have many, many parts. And there's two different types of parts that we talk about in IFS. One is the exiled parts. And in my book, I talk about remembering the experience of childhood sexual abuse. That would be a very common exiled part when you have a traumatic event in childhood, whether it be a big T trauma like abuse or violence, or a small T trauma like being bullied. We take those experiences from our childhood and we just shut them down. We lock them up and we're exiling them. And the way that we keep them locked up is we build up all these other parts that are called protectors. And protectors are all the ways that we numb any possibility of feeling into that exiled part. And so a protector could be, like in my case, I talk about my addiction. It was like the cocaine addict that I was a protector, protecting me from feeling those impermissible feelings. The workaholic, the rager, the knives out is one that I named. I would just like, anytime somebody would challenge me and I felt out of control, I would be like, knives out. So can you identify any of your protectors right now?
One that I was thinking about too is, I call it like the sick one. It gets me a cold, it gets me sick. Go into the nurture zone. Don't think about what else is happening. If that's too overwhelming, okay, we're just going to get sick and then we can rest.
Yes. I actually write about this in the book, as you know, to tie this together with IFS. I talk about how our physical conditions are psychosomatic. So the body responds to the impermissible exiled parts. So when we touch into that exiled part, we feel so extreme in our anxiety or stress or whatever the protection is that it starts to affect the body. The body becomes the protector, yes. But I'm saying protector with air quotes. And so the goal of IFS is to create a direct line of communication, connection, and leadership from self to the parts. So to really simplify this, right now I have an old protector that's coming back, but she's not nearly as extreme as she used to be because we've done so much work with her. But she's the part that says, I have to get it all done. I have so much on my plate. I got to get it all done. I want to get this to my readers. I want to make sure people hear about this. I'm going to let my publicist book me 6 podcasts in a row. That's the part. And so now that part has been worked with, it's formerly a workaholic part, and now it's just a committed part. It's the same, but it's just not extreme anymore. But it's still showing up. And so I'm so aware of her and so connected to her that I can let self lead her. And self will say, you need to take that 30 minutes in between your last podcast and Jess, and then you have to really relax and lie down and do your meditation and cuddle with your kitten. And then that's the part that's saying, you can't do that call this afternoon. You're going to go in the sauna instead. It's the part that's saying, let your husband take over the nighttime routine tonight so you can just go to sleep early. It's the part that's really consciously aware of what my goal-oriented part needs to stay safe and steady. So self is curious about that part. What do you need right now? And when I tap in and I talk to the overworking part, I hear what I need is create more space. I hear I need to sleep. I hear I need more help with my schedule. And some of it's just, I just need to be seen. Please just see me. Please just see that I'm here. Because we have no bad parts. We don't want to shut them down. We want to connect to them with compassion and love, and then therefore they become calm and less extreme. Listen, that part is really powerful, that part of the working part. She wrote 9 books in 11 years. She served, millions and millions of people. She's coming out with a book that's going to transform people's fucking lives. I can say that with conviction. But she also can do it with less stress and just a lot more ease.
I love this idea of parts and really breaking down the different pieces of ourselves, because I think everyone at some point or another has identified with that inner self. At To Be Magnetic, we call it like the higher self. It's that love essence inside of us that has those feelings of surrender. It's that calm, confident kind of witnessing what's happening, but not reactive to what's happening, and always somehow knows the answers.
Has the answers, and has, most importantly, the steadiness of safety. I was on the phone with my speaking agent this morning, and she's like, I'm so sorry that the client didn't get on the call with you this morning. We'll try for later. They were so all over me yesterday to get you on. And I'm like, all good. Like, if it works out, it works out. This client was going to interview me about this topic. Like, if it works out, it works out. If not, like, whatever, we'll move on to whatever's next. And she's like, I wish I could be that relaxed about it. And I just, first of all, I was like, can I send you a book? But truly, that is how I feel now, because I trust that not only I'm being led by this internal parent self, so everything can be steady, but I also believe, like self, that the universal energy around me is supporting me and guiding me. And if I'm not supposed to be somewhere, it's not going to work out. And if I'm supposed to be somewhere, it's going to be flawless. And so I have this perception today that I live my life with, which is, if it's not easy, it ain't going to happen. And yeah, you could say, okay, Gabby, you're 20 years into entrepreneurial careers, and you could say this. Sure, it makes it easier that like I can pick and choose things and whatnot. But I say that not just with my career. I say that with my friendships. I say that with my travel plans. I say that with my child. It's not just because the career is working out. It's because that's a choice that I make to show up to life with. Rejection is protection. If it's not working, it's not supposed to happen.
It's interesting too, because, when you go back and look at it, whatever the rejection was, it was the exact either lesson you needed to find a deeper well within yourself, or something even better came along. And if you had just surrendered to that outcome, you could have received it in a more easeful way.
Yeah, I can speak to that actually. So 3 months ago, I was 5.5 months pregnant 3 months ago. And sadly, I had to let go of the pregnancy. And it was a real golden baby, that baby. I'd worked a year of IVF to get that embryo, and he was healthy. So my body wasn't giving him what he needed. And I went through the grief of that, and I continue to grieve it. But man, I can tell you with full certainty and conviction, and I could say this to you even 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, this happened for a reason. There's something far greater on the way. And I know that. I believe that. And I also noticed the spiritual assignment in all of it, which is never to sweat the small stuff and to stay close and connected as deeply as possible to my marriage and my child, and to just be open to creative possibilities if this soul wants to come back in any form.
So sorry that happened. Just a really challenging experience, I can imagine. In the book, you talked about grief as well, and you had mentioned the need for inner safety and resilience to allow grief to kind of come up and surface. It's this emotion we stuff down with anger and all these other things, and it's really quite a scary and painful and all-consuming feeling. How do you feel like you were more equipped to face this grief, given all of the tools that you've picked up over the years?
Well, thank you for acknowledging me, but I want to say that in this moment, I feel so at ease with what happened. And I can only say that because my faith that I've established over the last 2 decades, or really 42 years of life, was like a pillow I fell into when I had this experience. It was just this gentle pillow to fall into. And it was right there. And I was like, wow. I've been counseling people for decades in this exact trauma of loss of a child. And it works, Gabby. It works. It really works. Here you are, feeling it and living into it in this moment. Faith is stronger than my fear. But the grief that you referenced that I talk about in the book is a little different than loss. It's grief for the loss of our own innocence, which is the final frontier. I write about it in the last chapter of the book. It's the final frontier. It's a final frontier in our journey back to safety in our system, safety and peace with what was. Because we have so much built up against all of the experiences from our past that have been really disturbing, whether they've been majorly disturbing or slightly disturbing. And when we start to heal those parts of ourselves and we start to resolve the past and reprocess it so we can come out new, what's left is grief. And it's the grief of what we lost. It's the grief of the innocence. It's the grief of the parts of us that departed for so long. And we have to face that grief and feel into it.
How do you navigate fear that comes up when facing big emotions?
I have always, throughout my entire therapeutic and spiritual process, been very aware of what I'm not ready to go into. And the therapeutic processes that I write about in Happy Days that I used in my own recovery from trauma are all very gentle, spiritual therapeutic practices that are really designed to help you titrate in and out of these impermissible feelings so that you don't just rip off the Band-Aid and just feel it all at once. And so I guess my answer is I don't have to be afraid of those feelings if I know that I am respecting them and touching into them when I feel safe enough to go there.
I think that's great advice. I think so many times people they kind of are aware of like almost like an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg presents and they're like, okay, we need to get rid of the whole iceberg today. I don't want to deal with this. I want life to keep moving on. And they want to go through it so quickly. But it's really about that gentle, well, what can we handle today? And I think also the idea that, your whole life doesn't have to be on pause just because you're in this healing journey. That's sort of life.
Oh, yeah. I wrote 9 books in 11 years during the healing journey. I was not pausing. But yeah, and listen, there are seasons in life where you want to just really take some time away and step aside and just really care for yourself and just remove yourself if you have the luxury of doing that. But I could have done that, but I didn't. I let my own work be a part of my healing process, in that the work I do, the type of work I do, is so vulnerable, and the writing is such a healing process for me.
I think it was so powerful that you shared the trauma that you've been through in the book, very vulnerable, but so needed, because I think people going through similar things probably need that guidance as well, and to know they are safe and okay and can heal. Especially in your situation, you became aware of this as you got older. I'm just kind of always curious about this, but do you feel there was a period at which your body was like, okay, we have enough tools, we feel safe enough to maybe start remembering some of these things now?
100%. You said it perfectly. So the story that you're referencing is this time. So I have had a journey of a lot of difficult times that turned into radical transformational moments. And when I was 25, I got clean and sober off of cocaine, but I never understood why I was a cocaine addict. And then I turned into a workaholic and a codependent, and I didn't know why. I was like, why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Why am I anxious all the time? Is it possible to live in a different way? I just couldn't contemplate it. And then by the time I was 36 years old, I had done a lot in my career, in my life. I was married, a year and a half married to my husband. I had built up this career, been on Oprah, I'd written like more than half a dozen books. I was just doing a lot and helping a lot of people along the way, but I was running from something. And so, the cocaine was a way to run, the relationships were a way to run, the work was a way to run. And because it was in the pursuit of something good, it was like applauded to be a workaholic. And it's also really applauded and acknowledged in this culture as like a good thing, but it's very detrimental to people's nervous system. So when I was 36, I started having these sort of moments of meltdown and cracking open. And my mantra for several months was, I can't go on like this. I can't go on like this. I can't go on like this. Then one evening, I had a dream of confronting the fact that I'd been sexually abused as a child. And when I woke up that morning, I was like, fuck no, I am not going there. It was such a real feeling. It was such a sensation that was so true to me. But I'd shut that shit down. I was like, no. 3 days later, I'm in therapy, and I wasn't telling her about this dream. But she said a few leading questions and a few things that opened me up to be in the full body acceptance of what this dream was. And in that moment, in that session, I just I didn't remember every detail, but I remembered it in my body. I remembered it in my conscious awareness. And this was a trauma that I had dissociated from for probably 30 plus years. And it was running the show. I had built up, so back to IFS, I'd built up all these protectors to support me from ever facing that impermissible trauma and fear and the heartbreak of that truth. To answer your question, yeah, I asked my therapist, I said, listen, why now? And she said, because of all the work that you've done, your system was safe enough to remember.
I mean, it's so horrific, but at the same time, the alignment of it all is so spiritual, because it's like the connection between your body and your memories and what's happening in real time. But then you also have this, okay, you're safe now. We know that you can handle this assignment. You can handle what's coming forth now. It might be scary, but we trust that you're okay to handle it now.
Yeah, that's right. And I like how you're saying we, because it's my internal condition felt safe enough to recall it, and my spiritual condition and the spiritual guidance that's been serving me for so many decades.
And you talk about this in the book, and you have great resources as well and meditations in there. But what are some of the modalities that you leaned on when this first came up? You know, for anyone out there who has navigated this situation or something similar, you know, where would you point them when something like this presents?
I would say go read Happy Days.
Yes.
So my book isn't just for people who have experienced big T trauma like sexual abuse or child neglect or things like that. It's for everyone. We've all lived through a collective trauma in the last 2.5 years, living and surviving COVID. So no one alive right now can say that they haven't experienced trauma. So this is for anyone who wants to face some of the stuck energy and stuck feelings that are keeping them in patterns that no longer serve them. And everything that I teach in this book is that path to inner peace and freedom. And I say that with conviction because I've lived it. So the practices that I share about in this book, I was definitely spiritually guided to, and also are very spiritual therapeutic practices. We've talked about IFS and how divinely spiritual that practice is. It's like connecting to higher self. Then I introduce methods like somatic experiencing, that's life-changing therapy created by Dr. Peter Levine. It's designed to really focus on your somatic experience rather than all the storylines and the memories, but to let your body reveal to you what needs to be released. And the premise being that we have these psychosomatic conditions that primarily with SE, that we have a physical energy that often gets truncated when we haven't fully moved through the process of resolving these traumas. And so by working with the body can release the stored energy. Then I introduce EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And this is such a cool one. It's a bilateral stimulation that you get with like moving your eyes back and forth or holding buzzers or listening to different sounds in each ear while you talk about the targeted feeling that you're dealing with in that moment. And it doesn't have to be the story of the trauma. It can just be how it's affecting you right here, right now. And the premise of EMDR that's so fascinating is that when you have this bilateral stimulation in the brain, listening to the buzz in either ear or having the buzzers in your hands or moving your eyes back and forth, you are opening up the brain's window of tolerance to reprocess old storylines, to move them through and then reprocess them and make them new.
So fascinating.
And it's so effective. It's just so effective. I break this all down in the book, and I share take-home tools for how to start to use these types of practices before you get into the therapy, if that's the therapy you intend on using. I also share emotional freedom technique, which I've been teaching for years, EFT, which is similar to EMDR, tapping on different energy meridians while you talk about the emotional disturbance. And I put EFT scripts and videos and meditations are available. All of it's in there. And then a lot of self-regulating methods and Gabby methods, and so much is in there.
Did you feel another level of sort of healing and catharsis once you had completed the book?
Yeah, I'll read you something from the introduction. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Introduction. The truth about this book. We're anxious for you, Gabby, said my publisher after reading the first pass of the manuscript. It feels too vulnerable, they continued. You're revealing one difficult moment after the next. You're not showing your true strength. My ability to be this vulnerable is my true strength, I responded. The conversation carried on with several moments of tears, passionate explanations defending the manuscript, mixed with mutual agreement and love. While this was a challenging conversation to have, it was necessary. This book is different from the 8 that came before. This book reveals parts of me that I'd never known were there until I started this writing process. This book tells the story of how to survive and thrive. This is my story of recovering from trauma.
Oh, so powerful.
I just got chills when I read that. So yeah, was it healing for me? 100%. Because it allowed me to give voice to experiences that I had spent so many years shunning and exiling and shaming. And now I'm safe enough and in enough recovery to share them with confidence and steadiness and tremendous amount of self-compassion. And therefore, I know they will help heal others.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code, EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode.
You talk about, when is too soon to share something that you're still processing through. And it's interesting because we share a lot of self-help things and what's going on in our journeys. And I have always had this internal rule of thumb that if it's really, really actively impacting me emotionally, I won't share it on the podcast until I have some sort of resolution with it so I can share it without an energetic buzz around it where it feels scary. It's like fear to step through vulnerability, sure, but then there's another level of like, this isn't ready to be looked at yet. How do you know when the time is right to share something like this? And how did you know it was the time to share it so publicly and widely in a book?
I write about this in the book, but when I first remembered the trauma, I was on a call with my speaking coach because I was about to give a talk 2 months later and I was having panic attacks about it. And I could get on any stage at any time. It was my art. And then here I was having a panic attack about it because I was so vulnerable and so stuck in that memory at the time. And I said to Gail, I said, I know I need to speak about this. I have to help so many women and men. And I just have such a mission here. And she was like, slow down, sister. Do not speak about this until you are ready, until you are no longer activated. And I kind of had to learn that lesson the hard way because it did come out in multiple different occasions and ways. And I wasn't fully in my body with it yet. I wasn't where I am today. And it definitely activated people. And I trust that that happened for a reason. I think it was thankfully it didn't happen so much that I was harmful, but I didn't have the ability at that time to be steady enough to co-regulate with the audience and care for them in that conversation because I didn't know how to co-regulate with myself and care for myself in that conversation. So it's a big lesson I had to learn. And thankfully it wasn't so harmful. It wasn't harmful, hopefully, maybe a bit activating for people for sure. But I think we have to unfortunately learn some things the hard way. And the good thing about that, me noticing that, oh, stop doing that, Gabby, this Gail's right, was that it really slowed me down to really, I knew I had to write a book about it, but I then really accepted that I cannot write this book until I'm on the other side. And so that's why I'm so proud to be able to talk about this and write about this and share this today, because I'm sitting in the seat of recovery and strength and wisdom and safety. And I know that that safety and recovery and wisdom is going to come through every single page, every single podcast, every single audio read that everyone listens to. It's coming through.
It is so fascinating how that works. Just you coming to it with that different energy really touches every single person and every single piece that it connects with. It's that subconscious sort of spiritual, energetic form that winds up spreading out and really touching and reflecting back.
Well, once I worked with a medium years ago, and he said to me that every book I've written, and this is for all authors, has energy infused into it. And whatever you've infused into that energy will come off the pages, no matter how many times it's reprinted. And I can see that here, 100%.
What are other books or teachings that you can pick up again and again, or that makes you think of that sort of principle?
There are some books that I've experienced in my life that have a definite transmission of energy coming through them. And what I mean is that when the author wrote the book, they were in such a service-oriented, inspired, aligned energy that it comes through the pages. Most every Wayne Dyer book, you can feel it. You can feel it. I think many spiritual books, you can feel that presence coming through. There's, one of the most popular spiritual books out there is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. And that book touched my soul even before she became my friend. I felt her friendship. And that's how I actually want my readers to feel. I want them to feel, especially with this book, I want them to feel that I am absolutely by their side. I am curious. I'm loving. I'm compassionate. I am holding their hand. I want them to feel that.
Who do you feel that from?
I feel that from my best friends. I feel that from my husband. I feel that from my son, my 3-year-old.
I was going to say, I bet Oliver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel that from some of the therapists I've worked with. I really do.
I think it's so important, people listening, thinking, to just evaluate where you have that support already. Is it through reading a book that's really touched you? Is it connecting with a therapist or someone else? And is it maybe in these little fractal moments with someone and just know I feel like that connection, especially after the year of 2020 and 2021, connection is so important, and that ability to feel seen.
Well, hopefully, I think that's the part of the rise of podcasts during COVID, because in podcasts like this, they can feel so seen, or listener can feel so seen and acknowledged and supported. And so right now, I know both of us carry the intention to help people feel seen and supported and secure and guided. And so you can, in this moment, just place your right hand on your heart and your left hand on your belly and just feel into the energy that we are both extending to you. And just let yourself know that we have been there with you and we understand your suffering. And we have so much compassion and love for you. And we want to send you a deep presence of genuine peace energy, peaceful energy, and inspiration and intuitive ideas to help you open up to all the possibilities for a greater sense of connection to yourself and to the world. And we don't even have to pray like that to extend that energy. I think we both have been the whole time. But it's really beautiful to be able to recognize that even in the podcast feed, you're getting a transmission, a download of energy.
We're going to get some tears on that one. I know I'm definitely misting up too. Mm-hmm. Just, it's so beautiful to think of the exchange of love between humans. Like, it's just such a powerful, powerful emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And then one other question I wanted to ask you about, you had mentioned it in a podcast you did with Rainn Wilson, talking about gurus and spiritual leaders and people that you've looked up to who may have incredible teachings, but, you know, maybe their moral judgment or ethical judgment or whoever they presented turned out to not align at all. How do you make space for the duality, for the teaching separate from the teacher?
Yeah. Well, I've witnessed twice now two quote unquote, major air quotes, gurus that even at the time I wouldn't have called them my guru. I don't know, maybe I would have, that were extraordinarily transformational in my spiritual journey, helped me strengthen and heighten my connection to what spirit means to me, helped me see in real time the effects of spiritual connection, helped me move energy out of my body. You know, just the teachings, even the direct access to the person in one instance was extraordinarily profound and life-changing for me. And in these two instances, these two men turned out to be horrific humans. In the human form, they were extraordinarily harmful and violent. And, you know, one of them is in jail right now, let's put it that way. And one of them, the other one's dead, but it's horrific. And what I can say from all that is if you take the teachings and don't guruify the teacher, then you can get what you need. But when you make someone your guru or your idol, when they fall, you fall with them. So one of the things that I'm so sad about is that the community that carried on the message of this one guru, I wish that they had just told the truth, because it would have been not about the guy and about the work.
I think even knowing that when you guruify someone, you're giving someone else that power over you, when really it's about tapping into that inner self power and letting tools guide you along that journey.
Yeah, you know, when people say to me, for years I've been saying this, when people say to me, you've changed my life, your books changed my life, I'm like, I did not change your life. You changed your life. You took the stories, you took the lessons, and you applied them. You could have read that same book and done nothing with it, and nothing would have happened to you. So you did it. You are the guru. I went so far to write a book called You Are the Guru. And any spiritual teacher out there that lets people call them a guru, run the other way. Run.
I think that's such a good discernment. I mean, you even think about it in the art space. You think about it with musicians. You're like, oh, can I still listen to this? What's the moral obligation here? How can I take this message separate? And I think it's a case by case and individual basis. But I think knowing you don't have to give over your whole, co-sign everything this person's ever done or take away all the teachings that's ever impacted you.
Right. I took down the photos. I threw out the handbooks with his face on it. I literally threw them out. But I returned to the practices that served me. And I will share some of those practices that served me and not feel like I have to say where it came from.
Yeah. And in that regard, that's spirit coming through the teachings that are needed in the world as well.
Correct. I don't want to deny the world of these great gifts, but for my own security and my humanness, right? The human part of me is outraged. The human part of me feels the shame of guruifying these individuals. The human part of me wants to deflect that shame by blaming. The human part of me wants to deflect the heartbreak of this community that wasn't truthful with me by blaming or, shaming. But they were all doing the best they could for whatever reason, the choices that they made. But what it means to me is that the teachings in my own interpretation of them may still benefit people. And so I don't want to take that away.
When you think of different levels of spirituality and oneness and understanding ourselves, and someone that may sit in complete sort of detachment from any outcome, like an Eckhart Tolle, how do you define that idea of transcendence and spirituality? Like, what does that look like to you?
I think that the word transcendence to me implies like we get somewhere. And I really do believe that we are in this body at this time on a journey of not just getting to one place, but allowing ourselves to be on a journey of moment by moment transcendence. So looking at it as a beautiful path rather than there's one end game. That's one part of this answer. And then the other part is that I believe that spirituality can be unique to any individual, but what it does mean most to me is to have the ability to surrender your will, your control, your perception of what you think you need to a power greater than yourself, a higher power of your own understanding. There's a lot of ways to develop that. There's a lot of different thought forms on that. I don't care how you get there. I just care that you open your heart to it.
It's almost like the in pursuit of versus the arrival.
Totally, because listen, I've had some really tough shit going on in my life. There was transcendence in all of it.
Yeah.
So I would never be like, okay, I want to just flip the switch and just one day be like, everything's fucking perfect. No, this journey has been so perfect. This journey has been painful and scary and sad. And now I can really relish in the relief of knowing that there's a genuine path out of those ways of being and that there's a consistent journey forward to even fine tune it more. And I believe that that's why we come here in the physical form, because our soul is like, okay, I've got some more to learn. And then I do believe personally, and this is my belief, that when the soul is complete, okay, I got that. I'm good. I got that. That it doesn't need to come back. It can stay in the spiritual realm. It can be angelic. It can be a guide. Or we, our souls, can decide to serve in a different way.
How often do you connect to sort of your spiritual guides and your spiritual team? I
have had this practice for 2.5 years. Well, for my whole life, I've meditated every day, but not my whole life. Since I was 25, I've meditated daily. But for the last 2.5 years, I've had a practice of 40 minutes a day of meditation. I listen to binaural music, so it's bilateral brain stimulation, EMDR music, and I lie down and I listen. I relax my system, I relax my nervous system, I get really settled, and I listen. And sometimes I literally hear things in that moment in the meditation, and then often it's later in the day or it's throughout the day, something will pop up, something will show up. And I know that my spirit guides and God are in every single moment. They're in everything. And I know when I'm settled enough to listen, and I can also sense when I'm frazzled and overworked and didn't sit long enough or whatever, and I'm not hearing, or if I'm cutting off connection because of stress or whatever, So the answer is I'm in communication all the time, even when I'm disconnected, because that's my consent into, okay, you got to get back into your center, and that's how you can really let guidance be revealed to you. And that guidance comes in the form of synchronicities, it comes in signs, it comes in an inner knowing, it comes in the form of people speaking truth I shared about how I lost the baby, and I've had a vision forward of how to have a child without carrying it through my body. And there are creative ways to do that. And, and a girlfriend of mine's been through a lot of the fertility treatment, and she wanted to introduce me to her doctor. And I put it out there, and I was like, reached out in December. I was like, hey, take my information. They're like, great, we'll be back to you in January. And then I never heard from them. And I just wasn't doing anything about it. Because I'm so busy, and I'm just sort of like, do I really want to do that? Or just sort of hands off the wheel a little. And my best girlfriend, who's the one that was guiding me to her doctor, texted me one morning, and she said, I just want you to know, I put an email into the doctor because she's very close with him. He helped her have her baby, and her baby's an angel. And she said, I put an email into him, and you should expect an email from them tomorrow. And like clockwork, they emailed me the following day, and I have an appointment with him on Valentine's Day. And that's my guides at work. That's my guides working through Jamie to activate the process. That's the spirit baby guide saying, Jamie, get me the appointment with mommy because I want to come. And she's tired and not wanting to go there right now because she's been through so much, but I need to come now, right? So that is how guides work.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful example of that.
Isn't that cool? Yeah.
I think sometimes people forget it can be that in-depth and that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think any connection, whether it's a connection to a relationship or a connection to your intuition or a connection to your art, it takes commitment and conviction and desire to know more. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it develops along the way.
Gabby, this has been such a powerful conversation. I'm so excited for everyone to go out and get the book. And one note I definitely want to make, I think you even recommend this in the book, but I would read through it fully first, and then you can go back in and pull out the exercises and go bit by bit. That would be my recommendation for it.
I suggest that. I also suggest that this is a book you return to year after year or every 6 months or something like that, because you're going to read it once and you're going to be like, okay, that's a practice I want to tap into. And then you're going to do a lot of work on yourself, and then you're going to come back to it. And then you're in a whole new place, right? It's like a new transcendent moment, and you can go deeper into another modality. So come back. I know that I'm going to get messages from people 10 years later being like, I come to this book every year.
I love that. Such a blessing. So what other things do you have going on? Where can people connect with you further?
Well, if you're inspired by this conversation, definitely go to deargabby.com/happy days and grab your copy of Happy Days, The Guided Path from Trauma to Profound Freedom and Inner Peace. And then the other place to find me where I hope to support people in countless ways is my podcast, Dear Gabby, where I do real-time coaching. I share solo episodes where I teach beautiful methods, interview awesome people, and really use my work at the highest and best to be of service to my listener. So that would be a good place to go too.
So exciting. Well, thank you, Gabby. This is such a joy and pleasure.
You're awesome. Thank you for doing such a great job of taking in the book. I really appreciate that so much. And anytime I do an interview with somebody that I know really read the book, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Well, have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy that sauna session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.